The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the small town of Willow Creek. The old oak tree at the edge of the meadow stood tall, its branches swaying gently in the evening breeze. Beneath it, Elena sat with her knees drawn to her chest, her auburn hair catching the last rays of sunlight. She traced the initials carved into the bark, L+E, a testament to a love that had blossomed here years ago. Liam approached quietly, his boots crunching against the dry grass. He was dressed in his military uniform, the crisp fabric a stark reminder of the reality they were about to face. Elena turned, her green eyes widening as she took in the sight of him. He looked so different, older, stronger, but with a shadow of sadness in his blue eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hey," he said softly, sitting beside her. His voice was steady, but Elena could hear the tremor beneath it. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of his impending deployment hanging heavy between them. "I don't want to leave you," Liam finally said, his voice breaking. He turned to face her, his free hand brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But I have to. It's my duty." Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she forced a smile. "I know, and I'll be here waiting for you, no matter how long it takes." Liam's gaze softened, and he reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Elena's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple silver ring with a tiny diamond that sparkled in the fading light. "Elena," he began, his voice steady now, "I've loved you since we were kids. You're my best friend, my everything. I don't want to leave without knowing you'll be mine forever. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Elena's face as she nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, Liam, always." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and they sealed the promise with a kiss under the oak tree, the place where their love had always felt safest. Months turned into a year, and then 2. Elena clung to Liam's letters, each one a lifeline that kept her hope alive. She wore his ring every day, a constant reminder of the life they would build together when he returned. But as the days stretched on, the letters grew fewer and farther between. Then, one fateful afternoon, a knock came at her door. Elena's heart raced as she opened it to find 2 soldiers standing on her porch, their expressions grim. Her stomach dropped as they delivered the news. Liam's unit had gone missing in action. There was no confirmation of his fate, only silence. Elena's world shattered. She fell to her knees, clutching the ring on her finger as sobs racked her body. The man she loved, the man she had promised to wait for, was gone. In the weeks that followed, Elena became a shell of herself. She stopped visiting the oak tree, stopped wearing the ring, stopped believing in the future she had dreamed of. It was Noah, Liam's older brother, who pulled her back from the edge. Noah had always been there, a steady presence in her life. He was quieter than Liam, more reserved, but his love for Elena had always been undeniable. He had watched her and Liam grow up together, his own feelings buried deep beneath his loyalty to his brother. But now, with Liam gone, Noah couldn't stand to see Elena suffer. He started showing up at her door with groceries, with books, with anything to distract her from the pain. He listened to her cry, held her when the grief became too much, and slowly, Elena began to lean on him. One evening, as they sat on her porch watching the sunset, Noah turned to her. "Elena," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "I know I'm not Liam, I could never replace him, but I love you, I always have. And if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life making you happy." Elena looked at him, her heart torn. She cared for Noah deeply, but she still felt the ghost of Liam's love lingering in her soul. Yet the thought of being alone, of facing the world without someone to hold her, was unbearable. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes, I'll marry you." The wedding day arrived, and Elena stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. She wore a simple white dress, her hair pinned up with a few loose curls framing her face. Noah's ring sat on her finger, replacing Liam's, which she had tucked away in a drawer. As she walked down the aisle, her heart heavy but resolute, she noticed a commotion at the back of the church. A man in a military uniform burst through the doors, his face bruised and scarred but unmistakable. Liam. Elena froze, her breath catching in her throat. The room erupted into whispers as Liam's eyes locked onto hers, filled with a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Elena, he said, his voice hoarse but familiar. I'm home. The world seemed to stop, as Elena's heart shattered all over again. The church fell silent as Liam stepped through the doors, his military uniform dusty and frayed, his face gaunt and scarred. The guests gasped, their whispers filling the air, but Liam's eyes were locked on Elena. She stood at the altar, her white dress shimmering under the stained glass light, her face pale with shock. Elena, Liam said, his voice rough but familiar. I'm home. Elena's heart stopped. Her hands trembled as she clutched her bouquet, her mind struggling to process the sight of him. Liam was alive. The man she had mourned, the man she had buried in her heart, was standing before her. Tears welled in her eyes as she took a step toward him, but Noah's hand tightened around hers, pulling her back. Elena, Noah said, his voice low but firm. Don't. She froze, torn between the man she had promised to marry and the man she had promised to wait for. Liam's gaze flicked to Noah, and for a moment, the brothers stared at each other, years of unspoken tension crackling between them. I came back for you, Liam said, his voice breaking. I promised I would. Elena's knees gave way, and she sank to the floor, her dress pooling around her. The room erupted into chaos, but all she could see was Liam, alive, broken, and standing before her like a ghost from her past. The days that followed were a blur. Liam moved back into his childhood home, but the man who returned was not the same one who had left. He was quieter, his once bright eyes now shadowed by the horrors he had endured. Elena visited him often, unable to stay away. She would sit with him in silence, her heart aching as she watched him stare out the window, lost in memories she couldn't begin to understand. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Liam finally spoke. I thought about you every day, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. When they captured us, when they hurt us, I held on to the thought of you. I told myself I had to survive for you. Elena's breath hitched as she reached for his hand, her fingers brushing against the scars that marred his skin. Liam, Why didn't you wait for me? He interrupted, his voice sharp with pain. You promised, Elena, you promised you. Wait. Tears streamed down her face as guilt and grief crashed over her. I thought you were dead, she choked out. They told me you were gone. I didn't know I could. Liam pulled his hand away, his expression hardening. You gave up on me. I didn't, Elena cried, her voice breaking. I was broken, Liam. I couldn't breathe without you. Noah was there and I needed someone. I didn't know how to live without you. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Liam turned away, his shoulders tense as he fought to keep his emotions in check. Meanwhile, Noah watched from the sidelines, his heart torn between love and insecurity. He had always known Elena's heart belonged to Liam, but he had hoped that, with time, she would come to love him just as deeply. Now, with Liam's return, that hope was slipping through his fingers. One night, after another tense dinner where Elena barely touched her food, Noah finally snapped. You're still in love with him, aren't you? He demanded, his voice rising. Elena looked up, startled. Noah, it's not that simple. Isn't it? He interrupted, his eyes blazing. You married me, Elena, me, but every time you look at him, it's like I don't even exist. That's not true, Elena protested, her voice trembling. I care about you, Noah, I do, but Liam, he's a part of me. I can't just forget him. Noah's hands clenched into fists, his frustration boiling over. And what about me? What about us? Did our marriage mean nothing to you? Elena's heart ached as she reached for him, but he stepped back, his expression cold. I can't compete with him, Elena. I won't. The tension between the three of them reached a breaking point one stormy night. Liam confronted Elena at her home, his anger and pain spilling over. You moved on, he accused, his voice shaking. You replaced me with my own brother. I didn't replace you, Elena shouted, her voice raw with emotion. I thought you were dead, Liam. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I was drowning, and Noah was the only one who pulled me out. "And now what?" Liam shot back. "You're just going to stay with him, pretending everything's fine. You don't love him, Elena. You love me." Noah stepped forward, his face dark with anger. "That's enough," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't get to come back here and tear apart my marriage. She's my wife, Liam, not yours." The brothers stood inches apart, their shared history and unspoken resentment bubbling to the surface. Elena stood between them, her heart breaking as she realized the impossible choice she would have to make. Noah stood in the dimly lit living room, his heart heavy as he watched Elena pace back and forth. Her face was etched with turmoil, her hands wringing nervously. He had always known this day might come, but that didn't make it any easier. "Elena," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence. She stopped and turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. "I can't keep pretending this is enough for you. I see the way you look at him, the way you've always looked at him." Elena shook her head, her voice trembling. "Noah, you've been my rock. You've been everything to me. I don't want to hurt you." Noah stepped closer, his hands gently cupping her face. "I love you, Elena, more than anything. But I love you enough to let you go. You deserve to be happy, even if it's not with me." Tears streamed down her face as she leaned into his touch, her heart breaking at the selflessness of his sacrifice. "I don't know what to do," she whispered. Elena spent the next few days torn between two worlds. With Liam, she felt the pull of their shared history, the love that had never truly faded. He was different now, quieter, more introspective, but he was still the man who had promised to come back to her. He had started a foundation to help other veterans, pouring his pain into something meaningful. It was a side of him she had never seen before, and it made her fall for him all over again. With Noah, she felt the comfort of stability, the gratitude for the man who had stood by her when she had nothing left. He had been her anchor, her safe harbor, and the thought of leaving him felt like betraying the life they had built together. One evening, Elena found herself standing beneath the old oak tree, the place where it had all begun. The moonlight filtered through the branches, casting a soft glow on the initials carved into the bark, L+E. Liam approached quietly, his hands in his pockets. "I knew I'd find you here," he said, his voice gentle. Elena turned to him, her heart pounding. "Liam, He held up a hand, stopping her. "You don't have to say it. I know you're torn. I see it in your eyes every time you look at me, and every time you look at him." She swallowed hard, tears welling up again. "I love you, Liam, I always have. But Noah, he's been my everything. I can't just walk away from him." Liam nodded, his expression softening. "I understand. I don't want to be the reason you lose the life you've built. I just needed you to know that I came back for you and that I'll always love you." Elena threw her arms around him, holding him tightly as she sobbed. "I'll always love you too," she whispered. In the weeks that followed, Liam threw himself into his foundation, finding purpose in helping others who had endured the same pain he had. He visited the oak tree often, finding solace in the memories it held. Elena and Noah worked to rebuild their marriage, their bond stronger now that there were no secrets between them. They talked openly about their fears and insecurities, and slowly they began to heal. One evening, as the sun set over Willow Creek, Liam stood beneath the oak tree, a small smile playing on his lips. He traced the initials on the bark one last time before turning and walking away, his heart lighter than it had been in years. The past was behind him, and for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face the future.